Hello, welcome to the Story Cure podcast. Today, I'm very excited to be talking to Mary Catherine Jones, who is the CEO and founder of the Audiobook Experience about audiobooks. So, this is a very exciting topic. Yes, thank you for being here, Mary Catherine. I'm very, very excited to speak with you today. Mary Catherine is a real pro. She's a real expert. And so, we're going to be getting her insights into creating an audiobook. I will let you talk about that as well. But just to give a quick intro, we know that it's a competitive market getting people's attention with our books. And that has only grown increasingly more difficult with each passing year as we see the rise of social media and short form content. And, people always say, like, who even reads books anymore? Well, guess what? People listen to audiobooks. And that, as the market for traditional books has kind of declined steadily over the years, the market for audiobooks has gone up, 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 up. And so it is critical that you have an audiobook. I mean, to me, it is absolutely non-negotiable. And the only question is, how are you going to do it? So, Mary Catherine, thank you for being here today. Okay, just let's dive in because I already kind of gave that intro of my perspective. What's your perspective on the audiobook market?
Well, so what I can do is tell you about what the statistics in the audiobook market. We know that 10 years ago, the audiobook market was somewhere around $420 million. So, not terrible. Fast forward to the end of 2024, it was $2.2 billion. So that was an eightfold increase in 10 years. And the projection, and I'm not making these up, the projection for 2030 is that we're going to be looking at close to $30 billion. No, I'm sorry, $20 billion by 2030. I got the 2 and the 3 mixed up. So by the end of 2030, we're looking at $20 billion. So that's, another tenfold increase in less than 10 years. That's going to be basically in 4.5, 5 years. To put that in perspective, at the end of 2024, audiobooks represented anywhere from 12 to 15% of the book market writ large. So that number is expected to increase to 20 to 22% in the next 5 years. So when you don't have an audiobook, you are missing, a pretty significant selling opportunity.
Those numbers are incredible. I'd seen kind of charts and this steady, trend upward, but 10x, and that's in the next, 5 years from now, 4 years from now.
Right. So wow. It's a big deal. And I'm in the right place right now, so yay. But it's never been easier to get into audio, and that's really that's the upside of all of this. And like you were saying, there's competition. It's about a way to garner interest in sales, but it's also a way to capture sales for people who really are only going to be interested in reading your book with their ears, and that's a significant portion of the market. I know as a reader, I'll read anything. I mean, I'll read a cereal box, but I love having an audiobook. I love having the ebook. I love having the print book. But some people are like, if it's not on audio, I'm moving on because they know that that's how they're going to be getting their content.
I couldn't agree more. I think that same holds true for me, honestly. I mean, I'm a big reader too, but there are some books where I'm only interested in listening when I'm folding laundry, grocery shopping, doing other things, gardening, driving. Yeah. All opportunities for audiobooks where it's not going to make it off that giant pile at my bedside table. Tell us about the process of making an audiobook. What does that look like for an author? And let's assume in this case that they are self-published or hybrid published. So they're not working with the traditional Big Five New York publisher who's managing the process for them. They're publishing the book on their own. They're putting it on Amazon, KDP, and they're selling it themselves.
Well, so are we looking at a book that is fiction or nonfiction? So I'll ask you the questions as if we were on a call together. So is your book fiction or nonfiction?
Nonfiction.
Nonfiction. And is this a memoir or a book of thought leadership?
Let's say mostly thought leadership books. There are some memoirs as well, but let's go with the thought leadership direction.
So in that case, what I would be recommending is that you narrate your own audiobook. Now, there's always the possibility for hiring a narrator. And if you said, oh, it's fiction, I'd be like, let's talk about hiring a narrator. But for thought leadership, where your voice is literally carrying the message that is your thoughts, I think it's really important to, whenever possible, have the author do the narration. So there are a number of ways, going from not so great to very good that we can go through. But at its core, what we start with is you want to have a room, a booth, a studio, a closet, something that is going to cut out the sounds of the outside world, because you need to have a sound secure recording environment. The standard for podcasts is very different than the standard for audiobooks. And so even if you're an experienced podcaster and you're like, well, I'm just going to, and I got my mic right here, I'm at my desk, I'm going to like bang this thing out, there will be so much more post-production that needs to be done. So that adds to costs. When you think about how long it's going to take to narrate your audiobook, just the strict narration, basically every 8,500 words or so translates to a finished hour of audio. So let's say that you've got a 40,000 word book. That's going to end up being between 4.5 to 5 hours of finished listening audio. Let's call it 5 hours because the math is going to be easier. So for the 5 hours, we're going to be scheduling anywhere from 12 to 15 hours of recording. That's just the straight, like, sit down and record it. I am assuming in this situation that you are working with a producer who is doing the recording for you. If you are doing the recording yourself, like pushing record and then recording, then it will probably take as much time. It may take longer. You may have to stop because the dog is barking, or the heating has just kicked on, or the air conditioning, or the mailman, or whatever. But let's just assume that you're in a booth, hopefully working with the producer. Once you have the finished recording, then it takes another 2 to 3 hours per what's going to end up being finished hour to do the post-production and the editing. Just like in filmmaking, it takes a gazillion, years to go through the film. It doesn't take a gazillion years in audio, but that's what takes the most time, is going through, doing the editing, and then you do your final cleanup and your mastering so that the files are ready to upload to the different platforms that sell audiobooks. It is absolutely critical that you work with someone who has produced audiobooks before, that knows how to do that post-production. If I've convinced you of nothing else, like, please don't do it on your own in your closet, because then you're on your own in your closet for a long time and you don't even know what you don't hear. You just don't know. But if you're then sourcing a studio that's near you, a music recording studio is not an audiobook recording studio. There are some that can do both. There are many that cannot. I am telling you that I get 2 or 3 calls a month from authors who say, I recorded my audiobook at a local music studio and now the files will not be accepted by Amazon. Can you help?
Why?
And the only way I can help, because they're not produced correctly, because they're not
What does that
mastered
mean?
correctly. What that means is there are certain production specs that are necessary for the audiobook platform. While they are MP3s or MP4s, they have to be mastered to 192 kilobytes per second, and your noise floor has to be between a certain range and all of that. And if it doesn't meet those specs, it is kicked out. So if you have got your audiobook mastered for an LP music album, you are out of luck, particularly if you work with a studio who did not save the original recording. So it's just,
wow. And they won't even accept it on Amazon. So it's not a choice of like, oh, this is good enough, you guys are being too picky. It's really like, no, sorry, you won't get your audiobook up on Amazon, which is where 90% of audiobooks are sold.
I had a book rejected because I'm not making this up, I think that I had 1/10 of a second. It was either too much or too little space between like the title and the chapter and the first chapter header. I mean, it was in one chapter, you know, it was like this huge book, and there was like, it was rejected because there was this one, and that was fine. Like, it was easy to fix, but
Right.
it's not like, oh yeah, you know, like sort of around this, like that. No, it's, and good luck if you're not a producer figuring out what the heck went wrong. So
Totally. I was going to say, do
hard.
they tell you, oh, you were 1/10 of a second shy on this one chapter? Do they tell you that when they reject
No,
it? Okay.
no, but I have my own mastering list, and so I know
Yeah.
where to go. Like, okay, so this didn't happen. What happened? Oh, there was actually too much tail at the end of this chapter file, and some things that happen in the mastering process which are not as exact as one would like. And you know, I try to catch all of that. Well, that's the only time that I had a file rejected. So since then, I've been like, is this meeting everything? Because you don't want that.
Okay, so you started off by saying it's pretty obvious if you have a nonfiction book and it's a thought leadership book, you want to narrate it yourself because it's your voice and you're literally probably using the book as a way to sell your services. That's almost always the case, right? With people who are thought leaders, whether it's speaking, consulting, coaching, etc. What about memoir? Wouldn't you want that in the author's voice 100% of
Oh,
the time because
absolutely.
it's a memoir? Okay,
The first thing you
okay,
said, memoir.
okay.
It is the most. It's so powerful. And again, I think with memoir, the difference between memoir and thought leadership is that thought leadership is very much it's with business in mind. Memoir is often cultivated because it's important to tell that particular story. It can be a lot more emotional, and so it's important to be prepared for that to happen. You know, I've got a box of Kleenex by my table and in the studio for a reason, because those emotions, they come up. One of the things that I thought was so interesting the first time I heard it, and now I hear it almost every time I work with someone, is that particularly with memoir, they said writing the story was what helped them in their healing process, and then telling the story with their own voice is what helped complete it. There's
Oh, really
telling your
beautiful.
telling your story, and so
Mm.
I that those aren't my words; those are the words of the people I work with.
I mean, I tell people all the time, when they're thinking about joining my course that, it's okay if you don't finish your book because even the process of writing it is so healing and it's been proven. Neuroscientists have hooked
Right.
fMRI machines up to brains and showed that you literally rewired your brain by writing your story. And I bet there's another level of rewiring that goes on when you speak it aloud. I totally believe that. Yeah, that's so
True.
cool. How amazing. All right. And then you said, just to cover this, because I don't work with a lot of fiction writers, but I am starting to have some come with me because we're publishing books now with the Story Cure Press. So, which is great. That's been our big announcement of last year. So, with fiction, how does that work? Do you hire an actor? Do you have different voices for different parts? Like, do you have sound effects? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, so there's the whole range. I personally usually work with single narrator. I can work up to double narrator, but it depends on how the story is structured. So if you think about like a romance and you've got a he said, she said, and so you've got a chapter and it's like, this is her chapter and this is his chapter. That's easy peasy. You're hiring two different cast members, but the assembly is fine. If what you want is closer to like a radio production or a full cast production where they are talking to each other and in dialogue, that now you're looking at a small budget movie, a small budget, because of the post production. It doesn't take twice as long. It takes 4 to 5 times as long, and you also have to make sure that they're playing off of each other in a certain way. There are studios that do that. I am not one of them, but I have wonderful resources for people too. I'm very clear about where my superpowers are, and it's not in the multicast. But yes, I do full casting for fiction and work very closely with the author to do that. It's ultimately, it's not my decision; it's the author's decision.
Okay. But you would recommend probably hiring an actor in that case, just
Oh, yes.
to make it the top level of quality. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, now take us through. So let's say that decision's made, and let's return to the example of the nonfiction book, a nonfiction thought leadership book. The author's going to narrate themselves, and you're saying, please don't go do it in a closet. What do you recommend? What are the choices available to authors making their audiobook with you?
Okay, so with me, I work with authors in a couple of different ways. People come to Vermont and record with me here in my Vermont studio. It's like a recording retreat. And I remember when I first started doing this, I thought, well, gosh, maybe I'll get like some people from like as far away as New York or Massachusetts. Well, Alaska, California, Colorado on the regular. I mean, like all over the place. It's great. Vermont is a lovely place, and I highly recommend it. So that is one option. I also work with studios closer to where the author lives. I have a network of partner studios. And so if I don't have an established relationship, I find one, making sure that they are audiobook compliant and not just Joe's Music Studio. And in that case, then either I am dialing in to direct and working with them as if they were here in my studio, or one of my producers is doing that with the author directly. I have a network of producers that I also work with. And so if I'm not available in the timeline that is necessary, then we work with one of my producers. So that's how I work with them.
So somebody could come to you and do a recording writing retreat sort of up in Vermont and have a lovely vacation, or they could find, if they live in a big city, presumably any city will have some kind of a adequate audiobook recording space.
Except for Fairbanks, Alaska.
Okay.
just happen to know that. Fun fact.
Just happen to know that. But then do you work with them remotely as they're recording in that studio? Like, are you on a Zoom with them or? Okay.
That's what I'm saying. So I do I basically dial in and
Got
produce
it.
them. If they were here in Vermont and I'm looking up because my studio is right here, I'm in one room and the author is in the other, and I'm talking with them, on my headset and my mic. And so I'm in exactly the same place, except that we're having a remote correct connection. And I'm listening to literally and following along every single word and saying, oh, and I think that we want to take that again. It sounded like you swallowed that word, or, the pronunciation that I'm more familiar with is X, right?
Right.
And just catching all of those things. Sometimes it's, let's take a minute. It sounds like you need a minute. And sometimes it's, you said this is the happiest day of your life. And you said, it was the happiest day of my life.
Right.
We can get another run at that one.
Let's put a little emotion in there.
So we just, I work with them in that way. And like I said, if I'm not available, then usually it's going to be my producer, Ryan, who is working with somebody when I'm not available. And I've been working with him for 10 years. And the most important thing for me, and I really mean this, is when you're narrating your book, you're in a place where you're reconnecting with some powerful thoughts, ideas, and feelings and emotions. And I would want somebody to be there to kind of support me in that space and just hold that energy for me and say, you're doing a great job. And, let's take that again. And yeah, sometimes it does take 72 takes, just be like, let's go, here we go. 73 for the win.
We can do it.
Yes. And so that's what a good producer is going to provide.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people make in their audiobooks?
Well, I've already talked about one of them, which was assuming like, oh, I'll just record it, and then they're mystified why it's not accepted. And then need to find somebody who will work with pre-recorded audio, which is tough to do because it's like taking like awful, I don't know, like an awful video and saying, can you make this, like screen quality? No, I can't.
Yeah, maybe start from scratch, right? Maybe start from scratch. Yeah.
So not understanding how much time it's going to take, and also that the emotional kind of stamina for doing that. But the biggest one, I think, is underestimating the timeline. The most optimal time to release your audiobook, and not everybody can do it, so I'm just talking about best case scenario, is, and more people are trying to release their audio and their print book at the same time. And it makes the most sense because that's your marketing, is going out there. So you want it available in all formats. And so I get calls regularly like, yeah, my audiobooks, my print book is coming out next month and I want to, record my audiobook. Like, well, and studios kind of booked because, we don't just hang out waiting, we do like to have people book their time. So you want to make sure that you think about that in advance. It's just like planning a trip. Just make sure that when your audiobook, when your book and your audiobook, you want it to be released, and then start thinking about how you're going to make that happen along the timeline. It is, if I finished recording your audiobook today, we've already did all the pre-work and all that kind of stuff. You got on the calendar a couple months in advance. It's all good. We finished your book today and it's 50,000. It's a 50,000 word book or a 40,000 word book. At minimum, it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks before that book is actually available to be purchased. Okay.
Wow.
So it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks. And that's if we've really communicated okay, we know it's going to be a short timeline. So we got to get this production happening quickly. So we get the post done in maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. You upload the files to your platform. It's not available instantly. It can take 1 week, 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks around the holidays. So even though it says it's in distribution, it doesn't actually appear on the page until a couple of weeks later. So you got to just build that into your timeline.
Wow. How long does it take to actually record? I mean, you gave us a rough sense of that, but let's say it's a 40,000 word thought leadership book. How many days would be spent actually just recording it?
So if it was 40,000 words, then what I would want to do is schedule 12-ish hours of recording.
Okay.
So we could do that in 2.5 to 3 days, most likely.
Okay.
Assuming that we're doing, and that gives us breathing room. That's if you come here to Vermont and we break for lunch and all that kind of thing. If we're recording it in a studio nearby, then we're usually booking 4-hour blocks. So initially, I would say we're going to book 8 hours, see how far we get, and then if we need to book another couple, again, knowing we might have to book a minimum of 4 because a lot of studios don't book for less than that.
Sure. That makes sense. Okay, good. And then from there, how long does it take for you to produce it from that being recorded?
So again, that's what I was saying. It's going to take.
Oh, that's the 4 to 6 weeks.
That's from the
okay,
last
I didn't.
day.
Okay,
Yep.
I didn't know if that included your production time as well. Okay, all right. So 4 to 6 weeks from that.
That is the production.
That is your
time.
production time.
Tell us what.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Tell us what goes into production on your end. I'm so curious. I'm the author. I've recorded my book with you. Now, what do you do?
Well, so we do a couple of things. So let's say that you're here in Vermont. It's pretty similar if you're in another studio, but during the recording, one of the things that I vet studios for is to make sure that they're working with Pro Tools and that they can record punch and roll. Okay, which is a way of recording, which is basically we're doing the gross edit as we are recording. So you're talking, and then oh, you made a mistake. So I'll say, take it back to the beginning of that previous sentence, and we'll keep going. And so we have that sort of the gross edit. Then we go through and we do a proof edit, and anything that was missed during the recording, we identify, and then we'll have a studio day for pickups. For a book of that length, for me, it's rarely more than an hour. I'm very good at catching things as they go, but stuff happens. I mean, we all know if you've been a writer, you've looked at a page how many times and you still didn't see the missing period. Same thing happens.
Yep.
Which is why I work with outside editors. So we do the pickups. Then what happens is every time we've done the gross edit, we need to We need to smooth that. We need to polish that. We need to make sure that there's not too much of a gap. Was there a big breath somewhere? We're taking that. Oh, and there's some stomach noise and a little bit of a burp that was between words, but we don't want it to be in the final audiobook. So we're cleaning all that up. We're adjusting the pacing, if necessary. One of the things that I coach people on is they get so excited in the booth and they're just talking a million miles an hour. It's like, let's slow it down a little bit. We can do a little bit of that in post, but you don't want to really mess with it too much. But sometimes you can insert some breathing room if there's too much of a rush between sentences or paragraphs. You try to get it right going in, but there is some room for fixing on the other end. So after all of that editing is done, then there are certain effects that you put on basically to make the voice sound fuller and richer, not changing the voice, but bringing out hopefully the better qualities. If you have a really squeaky voice, then maybe we can try to focus on those middle tones. So it's not quite so squeaky, and it's still your voice, but it's not going to be irritating. Or if you're, very, very bassy, then you might want to eliminate that or reduce that somewhat so that it sounds clearer to the ear.
So all of that goes into your post-production. And then what do you do from there? Are you involved beyond, you post it to Amazon, to Audible?
So I have a discussion with the author as we're working together. Where is it that you want your books to be? If the book going just straight to Amazon or Amazon exclusive might be the best option depending on the author's goals. By doing that, you can get a greater rate of royalty return, but it can also limit your audience. So if the library market, for example, is important to you in your marketing, then you can't do Amazon exclusive with a big asterisk, which is, and the reason for that is because Audible does not, and Amazon do not distribute to the library market. They don't buy from them. The libraries will buy from them. So that's important to know. There is an option for a 90-day exclusive with Amazon Audible. Then in writing, you ask them to say, hey, I've changed my mind. I want to see other people. They release you from that. And then you can go to a broader distribution platform that includes libraries. So it depends on how involved are you in your marketing with that. Do you want to upload it, set it, and forget it? Or are you, like checking your numbers every day and like, okay, it's a whatever, 89. Tomorrow I'm releasing
Let's
myself.
get it.
Yeah.
Where else do you go besides Amazon? And I mean, I'm presuming, I believe I've read this, but I don't actually know the exact statistic. Is Amazon as dominant in the audiobook market as it is in publishing? It's Amazon 85 to 90% of all book sales. So yeah.
It's not quite that dominant in audiobook sales. Somewhere, I think, in the 65% range, although I don't have those numbers quite as fluid. So another huge player is Spotify. Now, Spotify started out like, oh, maybe we'll do this audiobook thing. Try that.
Right.
Well, let's keep doing that. So Spotify has become a big challenge. Well, an additional resource for audiobooks. There's the library market, like I said. All of the apps like Libby is one that people download, and then they can check out books that the library has purchased the rights for. It's not like every book is available, but just like a library collection, they will purchase an audiobook collection, which is available. So Libby is another way. There's Apple Books. There's Google Play. Google Books is another way that they get books. And there's also, and Barnes and Noble has a platform. I'm trying to think of Book Funnel is another place, basically review sites, right? So that people who will get advanced copies in exchange for the opportunity to give reviews. Book Funnel is one of them. I'm learning more about them very soon, actually. I've got a meeting with them in a couple of months. Learn about that. And more authors are finding, and it's a labor-intensive project, but are finding that the best way that they can get the best rate of return is by selling directly from their website. But you need to get the tools to do that. Book Funnel has one. That's why it's come to mind for me right now. And but then you have the challenge of funneling people to your website. So I think that the best practice is a smattering of all of the above, and recognizing
yeah.
that you do everything. And so what is it that you want to spend your time on?
Yes, I totally agree. It's really the same thing as publishing a ebook and a soft cover. It's like I sort of tell people, well, why wouldn't you put it everywhere?
Right.
Just to try to optimize. But yes, you're going to, in your marketing efforts, you're going to choose one platform usually to drive people to. A lot of people choose Amazon just because so many books are being bought there. However, if you drive people to your website, you have the advantage of getting their email address, which is gold, right? And if you sell on Amazon, you don't even know who you're selling it to.
That's right.
So,
And that I think brings up a really great point, because when you're selling your audiobook, you do have opportunities to drive people to your website. And so not just to buy the audiobook, but let's say that they've bought the audiobook from Amazon or Audible, particularly with books of thought leadership. There often are graphics or resources or whatever
right.
that we don't narrate, right?
Yes, correct.
You can say, these are available for my audiobook readers as a free PDF download on my website. Please visit. There's lots of other resources. Come on
Yes,
down. And that's how
right.
you can capture their emails and all of that. So there are ways to maximize your audiobook assets, and that's one of them.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Mary Catherine. I'm so glad that you brought it up, because it's not just how are you driving sales to your audiobook, it's how is your audiobook driving sales to you? Because again, most of my authors, it's a lead magnet. Their book is a lead magnet. And so if you have an opportunity through the audiobook to say, hey, come check out, I had read Atomic Habits, James Clear, which I'm totally obsessed with. I love that book. I quote him all the time. But I had read it 10 years ago. And then recently I was talking to a friend about it, and I was like, yeah, I should go reread it. So I downloaded the audiobook on Audible, and I was noticing every chapter he does that. He's like, go to atomichabits.com/ whatever it is. And there's a downloadable resource. There's a place where you can track your habits. There's every chapter he's doing that. And I thought, oh, that is so smart.
Yeah, but it's the same thing with that book. I was just talking with someone else about this today. The One Thing. Did you ever read that? It's, where you're, again, it has all sorts of worksheets and all of that. And I think I'm right in saying that they didn't even really have them in the book. It was more like a little tiny picture. And then they'd say, oh, for the full thing, go to the website. I mean, they were on it.
They're on it. Okay, well, wonderful. All right, so now we're through the process of creating the audiobook, editing it, distributing it. What other tips and advice do you have for authors as they embark on this audiobook journey?
So you have an opportunity with an audiobook to create something that's not just the audio version of your book. I mean, clearly that's the main thing that you're doing, but consider adding bonus material, only available when you order the audiobook. I worked with an author who has a podcast, fabulous public speaker and all of that. And he said, okay, so what's going to happen is every so often I'm going to get a thought that's not written down. And so you're going to hear me say, all right, this is just for my audiobook listeners. Here's what I was thinking about XYZ, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, I want you to check that out. And then he'd go back to the text. And he was a great extemporaneous speaker. And sometimes we had to do it a couple of times because he'd not say it exactly the way he wanted to during the recording, but it was a way to have bonus content. And for professional speakers, for thought leaders, their voice is so much part of who they are, and it's how their audience is connecting with them. So having more of it is a good thing. The other thing to think about is you have your audiobook, but it's also a collection of assets. It is a collection of audio files. They're broken out by chapter. You can think in advance about, there might be a particular story that you're like, oh, if I just had that one bit isolated, well, ask for it. I have
That's
like this
so
story.
smart. I didn't even think about that. I mean, I tell people to do this when they're writing their books, to record Zoom interviews if they're interviewing people so that they can use clips from their Zoom interviews to promote their book when the time comes. But what a brilliant idea to take some of their clips from their high quality edited audiobook.
Exactly. And that's something that they can send along when they're pitching themselves for speaking gigs, for, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. It's really, um, it's, it's kind of a no-brainer.
And
And
you
there's
could
another.
add visuals to it too. Like you could take the audio, the really high quality audio, and you could create, you could use AI and like create a video and make a really cool short film in essence.
And, when you think about if your book has worksheets and that kind of thing, or it has a workbook component, and that doesn't work for every audiobook. But what if you had these different prompts and you had like, teaser from my audiobook, and you have the narration of, find a quiet place, get your journal and write about this, for 5 minutes. Maybe you've got a little bit of music going in the background. Don't get crazy with the music, but you can do a little bit. But certainly for if you're pairing that with video for, an Instagram reel or TikTok or something like that, those are all ways that you can do it. And those are the kinds of things, just like you might share an excerpt to sell the book, you can share an excerpt from the audiobook. Think about it in advance. Again, work with a producer who's going to help you do that. You don't want to, you can't be like, oh, and can I have 75 of these different, 1 minute clips? I mean, you can, but you will be charged for it because that is a lot of work. But if you're saying in advance, like, oh, can I make sure I have 3 or 4, you're probably not going to charge
Yeah.
for it.
I was going to say like 3 or 4, even 5 max. Yeah. What a good idea. I love that. I'm always into the way that, when another reason to write a book is this, what I call spinning content, like you spin it out in 8 different directions, right?
Yeah.
So then it feels less overwhelming. It feels less of a huge investment when you realize that you can reuse and repurpose every aspect of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's so cool. All right. So tell us just briefly, I'd love to hear your story. Like, how did you get into this? And what is,
So
what's driving you? What's your passion?
my passion is stories. I mean, it's just plain and simple. That's what it is. And I have been doing this in some way, shape, or form. It feels like my entire life, but from the time I graduated from college, I have been working in the publishing or literacy or education fields, right? So I was the director of sales and marketing for an independent publishing company here in Vermont for 6 years, 7 years. Took a step back and focused on making sure my children stayed alive. But while I was doing that, I started working with libraries and ended up developing this big musical story time. and and part of that got me involved with children's literacy. So I was one of the founding members of the Children's Literacy Foundation and served on their board and board of advisors for many years, which I absolutely loved. And then when my kids got a little older, I reached back out to my friends in the publishing world, and I said, and at the time I had started a voiceover business using my voice. And I thought, well, I'll just read children's stories because I do that at the library. The market decided it wanted to pay me for e-learning. So that's what I ended up doing. But
Fun.
it was fun. It was great. But along the way, I got the opportunity to work with not just my voice, but with multiple voice talent. And I was like, well, why can't I like take this skill I have of recording and producing other people and my love of stories and marry them together? And so that's what I did. And, I started focusing on audiobooks exclusively about 5 years ago. I'm at almost 150 audiobooks under my belt at this point.
Fantastic.
It is my true joy.
Hmm.
I love working with authors. So what I do.
That's wonderful. What a great story. Is there anything else you would like people to know before we wrap up today? And obviously tell us where to find you and how to get in touch with you.
Well, you can find me at the audiobookexperience.com. I think there's even a booking, button on that site, but certainly take a look through there. It gives you a pretty good idea of the way I work with people, how I work, and examples of the work I've done. And I love talking with authors, even if they're not ready to do their audiobook. I help them think about what they're going to need to get together when they're ready to do it. And of course, I hope that I'll be the one to help shepherd them through the process.
Fantastic. Okay, Mary Catherine, the audiobook experience, easy to remember, straightforward. We'll also put it in links, obviously. So great talking to you today. Thank you for sharing with us all about how to create a fabulous audiobook. Thank you.